Well, hi everybody. I want to apologize once more for the fact that I cannot provide this, uh, I guess, lecture? It's not really lecture, this discussion or whatever, that we can't meet on Zoom, but, at least you can sit back and eat some popcorn. Skinny pop. I like skinny pop. Sometimes pirate's booty. I don't know if y'all have ever encountered those, but those are a popular snack in my household. I obviously still have my private stash of chocolate because I eat a lot of chocolate and I don't trust my children. So, but that's not why we're here today. Today we're here um, because we need to talk about culture. We need to talk about Rusiani. So this is the one reading what you're probably hating me right now. You're like, bro, I cannot believe you assigned an entire book to read. But it's only like 100 and something pages, so it's not that bad. It's really just like a very long pamphlet, okay, that you had to read. But it's called The Two Cultures of Policing, and it's by Elizabeth Rusiani. I think that's how you say it. But essentially, this book is really one of the first books to take a more nuanced look at, or one of the first studies to take a more nuanced look at police culture. I feel like up until this book came out, we predominantly viewed police culture as one monolithic meaning one big old culture. Turns out there's more than just one culture in the police. There are subcultures. So we're approaching this like I approach class, and that is you have already read this, and I have posed some discussion questions that I am going to pose to you, and you'll be able to see them and read them because they'll be uploaded to Canvas, la-di-da. And then you will think to yourself, and I will also sort of provide some of how I would answer some of these questions. Yeah. So I hope this is helpful to you in some way at least. I feel like the theme of at least of the cover page of this PowerPoint kind of gives the Office vibes. Like da 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 da. You know what I mean? Like I feel the Office. Okay, now I just need a next slide. There we go. All right, so think back. I want you to think a little bit about maybe where you're working today, where you've worked before, and I want you to think. Do you think more than one culture existed? Right? Like think about that for just a second. I mean, I don't mean to come back to my Domino's days. Actually, I'm not going to go back to my Domino's days. I'll talk about university stuff. Right? So here in the SUNY system where I teach, right, I would say, we're a unionized group of people, so we have a union that represents the professors against the administration, right? And I would say there's a pretty big divide culturally between the admin and the professors, right? And for instance, like the admin are so focused on cutting costs, right? Like right now, like the SUNY system, like most university systems, are in really bad debt. And I don't understand why necessarily. I mean, I do understand why. It's because state and really federal subsidies for universities have been reduced slowly over time, over the last couple decades, and so university costs continue to go up, but they're not getting as much help from the federal government as they used to necessarily, and so now universities have to find a way to make that additional money, and so they charge students ridiculous amounts of money, encourage them to take out loans that they might or might not need. And anyway, so universities are becoming more business-like, and that's because they need to save money, right? They have deficits, they have debt, they need to deal with it. And so administrators are usually worried about cutting costs, right? and saving money. They want to beat the deficit, and I think where I work currently, there's a massive focus on doing that, and so that's really what the administrators care about. They want to fix the deficit. They want to make more money, but they also want to save money, and so they do things and think about things that involve that. Whereas us professors, we have to, depending on who, like if you're a junior professor, if you're an assistant professor, your focus is, I need to get tenure, right? So the things that you're going to do is you're going to focus on research and presenting at conferences and publishing and teaching and being somewhat involved in service. So what I mean by involved in service, you serve on different committees in the university, and you want to get tenure. Now, if you're a professor like myself, who's associate professor, meaning I have tenure, there's really only one additional goal to go for, and that's called full professorship. And in order to get full professor, you need to show the university that you're not only a long-term investment for them, but you're special, right? So maybe getting into leadership roles on committees, maybe being a standout researcher in your field, winning some federal money. You got to do something special, right? So my focus is on my teaching, on coming up with new programs for the university, such as the Cannabis Studies program. It is coming up with interesting new classes that involve studying abroad, right? So my focus has been to do something special in addition to publishing and doing research and all that, right? And then, but when you're an administrator, that's not what you're thinking about. You're thinking about, we need to make money, we need to save money, right? So because our social realities at work or our organizational realities are so different, the nature of our work is so different, the things we care about are different. And when I talk to an administrator, we might not be able to commiserate with each other. So we don't really see much need to socialize, right? But if I talk to the professor who's in the office next to mine, right, we can commiserate about a lot of things. I am recently tenured, meaning I've been tenured for about a year now, whereas my neighbor is going up for tenure in 2 years, right? So he and I get a lot of things in common that we can talk about, right? And all the other people in our general area there at the office, we all can talk about things that we all can relate to. And because we can relate to these things, we become connected, and therefore a organizational culture develops, right? But that, because we all have similar job duties, we all have similar social realities, and so therefore we connect, we share certain views on things, certain norms, and therefore we become a group, a culture. Same with administrators, right? Like administrators commiserate with other administrators who are like, oh man, these faculty members never stop complaining, or oh man, where the hell are we going to get the money for this, or oh man, let's do that, or let's do this, right? So they all commiserate with each other with their administrator problems. And so consequently, not because of anything in particular, you have two different cultures that exist at this one academic institution. And these two cultures aren't always getting along. Yes, both of them, I think the one thing that we all have in common is that we all want the university to survive, right? It's just because of our social realities, we think of different things, right? For instance, one thing that happened is we used to have this thing called Blackboard, right? It's like a LMS, like a thing that you hand in your stuff on, and then that cost too much money, so we cut it and we got this new thing called Brightspace. Brightspace sucks, okay? There's no other way to say it. It's not like Canvas. Canvas is amazing. You all are lucky to have Canvas, okay? Brightspace is clunky. There are the coding that they used on the back end of it is just lazy, so it causes you have to click a lot, do a lot of clicking just to do one thing. It's not very mobile friendly. So it's just, you get what you pay for, right? It is cheap, and it is cheap, okay? Well, guess what? The administrators They didn't really have a problem getting it. Why? Because it's cheap, right? Now they're reaching some of their goals and saving money. But what does that do to the professors who are creating 4 classes a semester, who are teaching? Right now, it adds time to their work. It takes a little bit of time away from their summers and from their winter breaks because they got to spend additional 2, 3, 4 hours setting up their classes in Brightspace, because Brightspace is not as easy or straightforward as Canvas or Blackboard was, right? So something to the administrators, which was a very rational, sensible thing to do, that I think anyone would be like, all right, well, Brightspace is worse than Blackboard. We recognize that, but it's not that much worse, right? In their eyes. But then you look at the professors, they're dealing with it. Not only do they have to learn a whole new software, but it's also a worse off one, right? So usually when you go backwards, right, it hurts more, right? And so people were not happy about that. Another thing that's also happened, and this is something that doesn't necessarily just happen here, it happens everywhere. In order to boost enrollment, universities will often hire these enrollment associate provosts or enrollment deans or enrollment these people who are supposed to like come in and have these great ideas for how to improve enrollment. Just more administrators. These people are usually getting paid 2 to 3 times what your professor's getting paid. And so if we're letting professors go, or we're not refilling lines after people retire because we're trying to save money, but then we hire a person to quote unquote fix enrollment that makes 2 to 3 times what a single professor would make, right? That irritates the professor culture. Okay, same thing with class caps, right? There's been a lot of talk, and you get this everywhere, where administrators want to increase class caps. Like if we can put 35 students in a class instead of 30, well, that's like we have to, we don't have to hire as many professors then. So at where I work, 2 cultures exist. We have professor culture, we have administrator culture, and we have different goals. We think about different things, and because of that, we don't always get along, especially when it comes to money. Because when the administration has to make decisions about money, it usually makes the professors feel like they are being put at some sort of a disadvantage, right? It makes the professors feel like these people don't care about, about the professors or about the students, right? And so that happens, and you might have a similar thing wherever you work, where your managers or your CEOs or whatever do things a certain way, but you all feel like you're getting screwed over somehow, right? And so multiple cultures can exist at a single organization, and Rusciani was the first one to really point this out among the police. And so why is it important to understand organizational culture? Well, like when we did the Lipsky readings, right, it was very, very clear that culture can really, really screw things up for you, right? You can make as many rules as you want. You can make as many laws as you want. But if culture isn't congruent with it, it doesn't matter, right? Like culture is really, like Dr. James Willis wrote this paper, and the title of the paper is like something like "Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast," meaning like you can have all kinds of ideas as an administrator for plans to make something better, but if the organizational culture of the people you are imposing whatever strategy on doesn't compute, isn't congruent with, they don't accept it, then it's not going to work, right? It's kind of like that. There's some research that shows that like therapy really only works for people who believe it will work for them, who want it to work for them. So like innovation and strategy and change at a police organization will only work if the patrol officers are willing to play ball. Like if they're not willing to play ball, it's not going to work. So then from a scholarship standpoint, it's good for us to understand organizational culture, because if we are going to say here, one of the things we've said a lot here in this class is, we need to fix training. We need to fix training. Officers need to be trained on how to de-escalate. But if patrol officers don't think there's a need for them to de-escalate, or if they feel like people don't care about police officer safety with all this de-escalation talk, do you think they're really going to buy into that training? Do you think the millions of dollars or even billions of dollars we might spend across the country on implementing these training programs would actually be worth it? So if we can understand organizational culture, especially among the police, and we then want to teach them de-escalation training, oh my goodness, we have to then say, okay, how can we appeal to their culture? Well, we know that patrol officers are very, very, very much obsessed with officer safety, right? So now, when we go and we say, hey, we want you to learn how to de-escalate things, we don't come at it from, hey, you don't know how to talk to people, but we come at it from, all right, so we found some new creative ways to help improve officer safety. One of these things is to help keep the temperature nice and low during intense situations. So what we're going to teach you are some tactics that might help reduce violent responses from citizen encounters, right? So by understanding organizational culture, it helps us implement strategy and innovation and change, and eventually help us impact police discretion, right? So how we understand organizational culture will help us successfully or not successfully implement change, if that's even a possibility. So that's why you're reading this book, all right? Not just because I'm a jerk and want you to read a whole book, okay? So I want you to think a little bit about, like, are there multiple social groups where you work? And then I also want you to think about, how often do you guys talk about, well, back in the day when I first started, blah, 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 but now, blah, 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 right? Me and my fellow professors yearn about the good old days all the time, the good old days. We yearn about the days before AI, yeah? Oh, the days before Zoom, the days before COVID, the days before this and that, right? I'm sure you all think about it too. I mean, I remember at Domino's Pizza, we yearned for the days before we started putting the stupid buttery sauce on our crusts, okay? Because that's like when I worked at Domino's Pizza, right? Like before you got like the buttery crust, it was just like a nasty crust. It's just like, it tasted like nothing. It was gross. But it was easier to make, and you don't forget it, right? And also that, whenever you get that garlic, in my opinion, whenever you order from Domino's, I would just hit the no garlic crust and just have the old crappy crust, because that quote unquote butter garlic sauce they put on, that stuff does not congeal, okay, when you put it in the refrigerator, which means it's not butter. It's something, all right? And I don't know. I would just not eat it, okay? I don't even know where we were. See, all this Domino's talk. Yeah, we would always yearn for like the days before the buttery crust, right? Like, because then it was just, you get it out of the oven, you put it in the box, and you go. But now you have to get it out of the oven, you put it in the box, you got to swirl it around, right? Got to get just the right amount on there, and then you cut it and you put it in the box, right? There was always, or when they changed the shape of the Domino's boxes, it became a lot more difficult to fold them, right? And one of the things you do when you're a pizza delivery driver, you stand in the back of the store and you just fold boxes. That's what you do. You just fold pizza boxes. It's a lot of fun, actually. It's cathartic. But nonetheless, right? People always yearn for the good old days. Guess what? The police do the same thing. So Rusiani was like, so essentially what Rusiani did is they did a big old ethnographic study, a qualitative study at NYPD, I think in like the 60s or 70s. Yeah, let's go with 70s, okay? either way, they did this big old ethnographic study. They hung out at 2 separate precincts for a long time, I think in the Bronx and in Manhattan. And they just got to know police officers. And during this time, as they did observations and did interviews, they hung out with them, they learned, oh my goodness, there is a split or a bifurcation in the police organizational culture. Now, they said that before there was just one monolithic culture. Now, this could be wrong, but that's what they say, okay? And they said before this event that happened, the administration or the command staff or the brass, all right, they all used to, or management cops as they call them, used to be on the same page as the street cops or the patrol officers. They used to they used to close them off from society. They used to have their backs. They used to protect them. But because of the Knapp Commission, those of you who don't know what the Knapp Commission is, Google it, okay, or read about it in Rusiani. Yeah, that caused a split in the culture. It caused a bifurcation, meaning that all of a sudden the government was bearing down on NYPD and was saying, yo, y'all are corrupt AF, okay? We want to see what's going on here. So then obviously the management is going to be like, oh crap, people are blowing up our spot. We gotta behave a certain way now. We gotta be accountable. We gotta have oversight. We gotta make sure that we respond to these people, because these people are the ones who are controlling our salaries, folks. Right? And so because of this Knapp Commission, the management cops started becoming more outward looking, right? More responsive to the community, more responsive to politics, more responsive to change, and more future facing, whereas the street cops did not. They saw this as, no, this is just people who don't understand. Like the public, they don't understand the realities of police work. And so they're not going to get it when we have to beat someone down. They're not going to get it when we have to say, bad things. They just don't understand it. They don't understand the pressures we're under or the stress we have to feel. And so these people are going to have these weird opinions about us, but that's BS. But now our people who had our backs, our management, these people are just playing to the bullshit that the government wants from us. They no longer have our backs. They're selling us out. They're throwing us under the bus, right? And so this Knapp Commission investigation really split the two cultures into two. That's at least how Rusiani explains it. Now, Rusiani also says that most of the research that they did, or most of the information that they got from the street cops. So it could just be that there was always the separate culture, but it wasn't as profoundly bifurcated. And that it's just when this Knapp Commission came in, it really just highlighted the differences between the two cultures. Because I think any other sociological analysis of social organization would imply that there would have been different cultures, because again, the nature of the work of management, whether it's before or after the Knapp Commission, would still be different to that of people who are working on the street. So in my own opinion, as someone who's a scholar and is well versed in organizational science, I do not think the Knapp Commission in itself split this monolithic culture into two. I think the Knapp Commission just added strain to this already different cultures, and then separated them further. That's what I think happened. But I could be wrong, because there's really no way of knowing, okay? Maybe AI will tell us one day. So what are some of the values? Well, the street cops focus on street cop stuff, okay? Having each other's backs, okay? Staying closed off from society, yearning for the good old days when we could give someone just a good old kick in the butt, and use a little bit of street justice and people not get up in our business, right? Where cops are good people, sticking up for good people, whereas so it's very personal, it's very emotional with the street cops. With the management cops, it's very impersonal and professional and rational. Well, we have to increase public safety. We have to fight crime. We have to implement new strategies that adhere to community-oriented policing or to more liberal views or whatever the public wants, right? So they're looking at the future. They're looking at the future of policing. They're looking at the rational goals of policing. They're looking at how can we prove to the public that we're actually doing our jobs? How can we measure effectiveness? What numbers can we give these people to show them, hey, look, we're making improvements, right? Where street cops are like focused on, I need to survive, I need to protect the people I work for, I need to protect my fellow officers, we need to have each other's backs, the world is against us, we are a very small group of people defending the good people from chaos. Whereas management cops are like, all right, we need to get the numbers, we need to focus on meeting these goals, we're going to try this new thing, we need to cut costs, right? So like they're focused on completely different values. So now I want you to think, what impacts do the conflicts between the cultures have on themselves and each other? Do you think that when conflict between two organizational cultures exist, do you think it's going to be good or bad? Because like you can maybe say, well, maybe a little bit of conflict is good. It might help progress things. Like a little bit, if two groups are struggling for power, right, that exchange of power might help progress things. You can make that argument. Or you could say to yourself, well, but if it's too much, right, won't it just embolden them and stymie any sort of progress? Right? Like I feel like sort of in the United States, if we were to consider the different cultures that exist within the states, I think we've become a lot more emboldened by our own subcultures. We started identifying a lot more with the subcultures of which we're a part, and that has caused conflicts between our subcultures and other subcultures to the point where there's no more progress, there's no more cooperation at all, right? No one is willing to lose one. No one is willing to lose a battle anymore. People are fighting tooth and nail for the smallest things, right? And that can't be good. First of all, it will make you more emboldened, meaning like you'll become even more a part of your subculture and have more aversive views towards the subculture, towards other subcultures, right? And then because of that, there's going to be less communication between the two groups, and when communication breaks down, so does any sort of compromise or cooperation. And so I think the impacts of the conflicts between the cultures have is they embolden themselves, and they stymie communication between each other.